Welcome into Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Team reporter Casey Phillips here with an incredibly special guest. It is our final show before our first preseason game, so we had to bring in the voice of the Buccaneers himself. You will hear him again on Friday night, Mean Gene Deckerhoff. Thank you so much for joining us.
Casey, you don't have to wait till Friday night. Touchdown Tampa Bay! Fire them cannons.
We're
okay?
ready.
There
We're already ready. I love it.
It's officially preseason.
It is. That's how we know when we hear you say those words. It's official. The season is here, and this is your 35th year calling Buccaneers games. First of all, congratulations. That's an amazing accomplishment, and I just would love to hear for you, what keeps you wanting to do this, coming back? What excites you even going into your 35th year of doing this?
Well, I love the game of football, number one. Number two, pewter and red just look really good on me, as you can tell. I'm proud to wear the red
obviously.
And pewter. And third, there's no other team in the National Football League that I would want to work for than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know, Tampa is my second home. I live in Tallahassee, Florida. A lot of folks don't know that, but that 4.5-mile trip gets easier and easier every time the Buccaneers win, particularly going home on Monday morning. So,
yes.
But it's great to be the voice of the Buccaneers, to be on radio where you don't have to see my face. You got a great face for television. I have a great face for radio. But and the thing about the NFL, unlike the college game, you see the veterans. You know, you don't get a chance to see a college football player maybe 3 years, 4 years, you know, at the most. But then you see guys like William Goals that have been around the league for like 14 years. And it's just amazing the continuity of the NFL. That's what I like. Now with free agency and, well, college with the transfer, with free agency, the draft and the contract, it's a little different than it used to be. But my golly, it's still a great game. People ask me this question, Casey, what's college football, pro football? They're different games. They're different games. The game of professional football, at least at the NFL level, is completely different, except for the shape of the ball, than the college game. The timing is different. The rules and regulations are different. I asked a college coach once, how come tight ends have so much success in the pro game that they don't have in the college game? He says, because the defensive backs can't touch them after 5 yards, and they're big guys, a big target. If you can't knock them down. But anyway, great seeing Rondi Barber in Canton, Ohio. Rondi, I missed the presentation, but I saw your speech. It was absolutely marvelous.
He did an incredible job.
An uncommon guy. An uncommon guy.
And for you, what most excited you about getting to see him? I mean, you've seen a lot of these Bucs guys go into the Hall of Fame. For Rondi specifically, what were your first thoughts when you heard he'd gotten in? 5
of the 6 Buccaneers that are enshrined and their busts are in the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, I personally know. Leroy Selman I knew personally, but not as a football player, as a man, athletic director at the University of South Florida. What a tremendous, he was our first Hall of Fame inductee. We now have 6, including Tony Dungy. And how about 4 defensive players off of that Super Bowl 37 team that are enshrined?
It's incredible.
That is an incredible story when you think about the history of this league and the great players that have come along.
And what are you looking forward to most this season as you come back and look at this team? This is your first day you've been able to come out to training camp. What are you like, man, I can't wait to see this?
Well, at training camp, it's tough to tell. Preseason games, it's tough to come on out to the stadium, fans, and watch this new team. Get ready, new quarterback question. You know, is it going to be Baker? Is it going to be Kyle Wolford from Wake Forest? I mean, I know him. John, for 4 years, he tried to beat Florida State. But anyway, what I'm interested in seeing, and I really want to see, is more than 5 rushing touchdowns. I want to see a 100-yard rushing game, at least, maybe a little more. And I think with what I've heard and what I've witnessed, Dave Canales, that run game's going to have more emphasis. I'm excited to see Rachaad White as the number 1. He wears number 1 running back. And you know, people are writing off sneak. Every time I hear Dave do a press conference, he's talking about sneak. And then Sean Tucker. I mean, I watched the video. You and Scott. I'm bragging right now, but Casey, you and Scott do by far the best shows of any NFL website.
Thank
but
you.
I
me
watch your
to
video.
Slip you that $10 later.
I thought it was 20, but anyway. But I watched the videos and on the website as well. And I tell you, this Sean Tucker guy, that little shuttle run they do, I don't think there's a guy faster than him on the shuttle run, and he's under the radar. But I think that, and I heard Dave say this at his press conference, we've got 5. Throw Pat Laird in there, that can do everything, and he can read a lot of books. But that running back room looks like we're going to have more than 5 rushing touchdowns. My goodness, that's the worst of the league last year.
Yeah.
Another thing I heard Dave say is we want to try to eliminate third downs. And I said, wait a minute, third down's part of the game. He said, but if you don't have to face third downs, you can call the entire playbook.
Yep.
And so I said, I learn something new every day in this sport of football. And so I look it up. We had the second and third down opportunities in the league last year. The Chargers were only ahead of us by about 15. And so if you're facing third down a lot, you're not having much success. And that means, there's a lot of talk. Casey, this is your show, and here I am talking a lot. But
no, that's why we bring you here.
But Casey, around the league now, the big talk is running backs aren't getting paid. Running backs aren't getting paid. Everybody wants to get the big payday, the big bag of cash, but running is part of this game. It always will be, and I hope that they can, continue to run successfully, but the Bucs have to run the ball better to be a contender in the NFC South, and I think we will be. We've won, 2 in a row? We've never won 3 division titles in a row. We've been to the playoffs 3 in a row. 4 in a row would tie the best mark of that. We had 4 Hall of Famers on that series of football. But the point being, let's run the football better and find out who the quarterback's going to be. I think we got great receivers. And defensively, I can't wait to say, sacked by Yaya.
That's going to be a fun one for you, for sure. Do you think about that when we bring guys in, of what their name is and how great that's going to be for you?
Well, you know what? When Gronkowski came out of retirement, I called Jeff Ryan, our broadcast man. I said, Jeff, I got something. When Gronkowski, holy moly, Gronkowski, holy moly, Gronkowski. But no, sacked by Yaya. That just sounds really good to me.
That's going to be really good. Yeah. How about the creamsicles coming back this year? What was your first thought when you got to see those and heard about that?
Well, I have to hit Jeff up because I'm a large now instead of an extra large. So that extra large orange creamsicle shirt that I have is it looks like a 10. But maybe I'll gain weight between now and the Detroit game on what is it, September? No,
October 15th,
Yep, I know it's October. But I began broadcasting Tampa Bay Buccaneers wearing creamsicle. I stood along the sidelines over at Pep and Root Stadium with our first head coach, John McKay, and he had on his creamsicle hat, and I had on my creamsicle hat. And I just think the uniforms look great. They always did. But you know what? When we switched to the pewter and red, those became my favorite colors. And I wear the red proudly with a Buccaneer flag. And I'll wear the creamsicle one more time, and Buccaneer Bruce on the helmet.
Yeah, it's going to look great.
You will look absolutely phenomenal in creamsicle,
Why, thank
Casey.
you. I'm very excited about it. I do love the creamsicle. And how about a quarterback competition? That is not something you've had to talk about on a radio program for us in a very long time. Do you remember the last time you would have talked about a quarterback competition?
Well, golly.
That about sums it up. It's been a bit.
I have to think that through before preseason game number 1 against Pittsburgh, Casey. I can answer that question. But no, for the last 3 years, we've had the GOAT. Now, what I'm going to say is that between the 3 quarterbacks running for the position or battling for the position, we had the GOAT, the greatest of all time. We've got 3 GOATs. Greater opportunity after Tom. So spell that one out, baby.
I like that. That's
Goats, we got 3 trying to get that starting job against the Minnesota Vikings on September the 11th, and we'll find out who the GOAT is.
Yeah, I like that. Now, and of course, you also called Florida State games for a very long time. Yeah. When Trask gets out there and throws a touchdown, are you going to have the same oomph on your call, even though he's a Gator guy? Yeah. I want to know if are we making sure that you got is the same amount of excitement for him scoring?
I'm trying to think. I think the COVID year was his senior year at Florida, and that was the year that Florida State did not play. So I did not have a chance to see him throw fist downs against my favorite college team. But no, I kept up with Kyle and the Gators that year, and he had a marvelous senior year and set SEC records, Florida records, and he's been sort of under the radar. He's been behind the original GOAT, so we don't hear a whole lot about him. People say, well, he's completed 3 passes his whole career. And well, think about this: the only snaps he's taken in a real game was in the Atlanta Falcons game, Week 18 last year. And who's at left guard? Who's at right guard? Who's the offensive line? And he was just under pressure. So it's not a true glimpse of what he can do. But everything I'm hearing from Todd Bowles, the head coach, from Dave Canales, who is a quarterback coach, by the way, by trade, now the offensive coordinator, everything I'm hearing is that he's picked up his game plan very, very well, and he's a workaholic, spends an awful lot of time in the film room, and it looks like it's coming more natural. Maybe this new offense, maybe the ticket for Kyle, but I know this, and he's quoted as, I've been a backup all my career. He was a backup in high school, a guy that was a phenomenal 2-way quarterback running Texas. I think he was Texas Player of the Year, so Kyle backed him up for 3 years. And then in college, he was a backup to begin his career at Florida. Really came into his own thanks to injury his junior year and finished the season. Then took the job away from Felipe Franks and became a starter, a full-time starter, his senior year. And I'll tell you what, our front office, Jason Light, Spytek, and Beal, that crew, they don't pick many bad players in that draft or through free agency. If you watch the track record, they've had great success. Kickers being the exception. But what the job that Jason, you look at the players on this team now and the longevity they've had, the guys that have gone free agent. I mean, they select players. They didn't pick Kyle Trask with our second-round pick 3 years ago to sit on the bench and not compete for the starting job. So I think, and then I mentioned John, he's a Jacksonville kid, Bishop Kitty High School. I saw him at Wake Forest he was a 4-year starter. And then he learned the offense that Dave Canales has. He may have a leg up on both Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask because it's a Kyle Shanahan offense and Sean McVay offense. And that for the last, 4 years? John's been in that offensive scheme. So, we may have the best 3 quarterbacks in the National Football League.
Look at that.
Even though we don't have the original GOAT.
Look at that. I love it. Well, Gene, thank you so much for joining us, and we all cannot wait to hear you calling the game Friday night. Again, your 35th year. Congratulations. Such an accomplishment, and thanks for all you do for the organization.
We have 6 Buccaneers of the Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame announcer, Casey Phillips. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you,
Find
Gene.
the air conditioner. Fire the cannons and fire the air conditioner.
Fire the air conditioner for us. All right, we are going to take a quick break. Watch this Meet the Rookies video. We'll be right back.
This is Meet the Rookies.
Meet the Rookies. Meet the Rookies.
Oh, this is what y'all wait for, huh?
So I like to get a buddy or someone with me and sing "Party for Two," the Billy Currington and Shania Twain version.
Miley Cyrus, Climb.
Gunpowder and Lead by Miranda Lambert.
I gotta go Miley Cyrus, Party in the USA.
So sick of love songs. I overheard Boss saying Miley Cyrus. I ain't gonna lie, that Party in the USA, hey, anytime that come on, hey, I'm the guy.
I played running back growing up. Like, I was toting that thing too. You would thought I was damn Ricky Williams.
I was fastest man in the school, so they were like, try out. So I just, let's get it. And I was just scared to get tackled like I am today.
It's like an embarrassing question for me. I was a center. I know I play linebacker now, kind of like a little skill position, not really, but it is. I wasn't even fat.
I always played quarterback growing up. I wasn't always this big. So up until I think my sophomore year of high school, I was a quarterback on our team.
I was a kicker. Middle school, I was a kicker. In high school, so I can't kick no more though. Like, terrible. I was the biggest one on the team. I was the fastest on the team. So they put me at running back, but scored them touchdowns.
When I started playing high school and I picked number 87, everyone in my high school called me Gronk because I was just the big tight end.
I was number 70 before all this. Now I'm 69, and probably a lot of people can guess the reason I like that number. It's just a goofy number.
They called me and said, what number you want? I said, just throw me in the number. I'm trying to play in the league. That's all I need.
High school, I wore number 13. I wore number 94 now. 9 plus 4 is 13. So that's something that I thought would be cool.
I want to be lifetime matching. And I had 3 at Nebraska. So you put 7 and 3, what they get you? 10, you heard me?
I feel like I swim pretty well. Like, I feel like I might not be Michael Phelps or something, but like, I can swim pretty well. I at least get silver or something.
I always want to swim. I want to be Michael Phelps, but I would be Trey Phelps, you heard me?
I'll probably say some in track.
I used to real deal hoop. Of course, we're going gold in the basketball league. Yeah, every time.
Probably track, I don't know. Probably run sign. Because, there's a Haitian team. I'm Haitian, so I can run for that Haitian team. So.
Wrestling, I think if I train and put my mind to it, that's where my mind goes there.
With a little bit more practice, curling. I was in a curling league up in Fargo, so I'd say curling.
That's Meet the Rookies with the fellas and the guys and the crew, you heard me?
I have fun.
That was cool. Go Bucs. You're not going to do Rookies?
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here now alongside senior writer and editor Scott Smith. Always great to see Mean Gene coming on the show.
I'm just thinking about the disappointment and all those viewers out there when it came back on and it was me here instead of Gene.
Do you want to give your Fire the Cannons impression?
Can I say
that
Fire
help?
the Cannons?
Yeah.
Is it Fire those cannons?
Ooh.
Or them cannons?
Suddenly, all of a sudden, I'm blanking on this.
I'm just bad at impressions.
Asked. He's still standing over there. Is it fire those cannons? Fire them?
Fire them cannons.
I'm so glad we clarified that.
Okay, it's pirate talk.
Oh, that makes sense. Those would be too correct grammar.
Fire them cannons.
I love that he's thought about pirate grammar.
From the expert.
From the expert, fire them cannons. Okay, let's talk about Friday night. We know we're all excited to hear about Mean Gene when he's calling the game, but there's a lot of storylines going into this game that we always, every year at training camp, we get so excited when there's finally going to be a game to give us more indication of things that we've been trying to guess at during practice. So we already yesterday talked about a lot of the things on offense we were excited to see. So now we're going to talk about defense and special teams. So for you, let's start on the defensive side. What's maybe one of the first things you're excited to see play out Friday?
Well, one of the only jobs that's really wide open for somebody to win the starting position, and it's not technically a starting position, is slot corner, but it really is because they're on the field more than 50% of the time. And that one's wide open. And we've seen guys like Josh Hayes, the rookie, and D. Delaney, the really versatile veteran that's stuck around here for the last couple of years because he can do so many different things. And then the undrafted rookie, safety Christian Isian, and we call him a safety, but he did play slot corner at Rutgers his last year. And those are the guys I think you've been seeing get the most snaps in there. And Coach Bowles told us the other day, don't get too caught up in who you're seeing getting first-team snaps and second-team snaps. Doesn't necessarily mean anything in terms of the competition. But when you get to the game, I kind of feel like it does mean something. Who's out there with the very first defensive snaps? Who's out there for those? That, to me, that would be the leader in the clubhouse right now. So I'm really excited to see that and see how those guys hold up against whoever Pittsburgh has in the slot. I don't know who their slot receiver is, if it's Deontay Johnson maybe, but they've got some pretty good receivers, so we'll see.
And that becomes such an important position. I mean, of course, we talk about Rondé going into the Hall of Fame and revolutionizing
the slot corner.
The slot corner of all time. And we have talked about how Antoine Winfield Jr. made a big impact there, but they want to be able to let him specialize. And so, it's already making an impact on the team that we're going to have someone a little bit more designated for that position as compared to having Antoine Winfield bounce around and do different things. But it just feels like these days, we talk about who's your starter, and of course it depends in some ways on the package that they start in. And it feels like nickel is just becoming such a bigger part of the game in so many ways of how often that is your almost main package because of what other teams are doing.
Teams are seeking them out now, as the Buccaneers clearly did when they drafted Josh Hayes and they signed Christian Izzy. And you're seeking out guys that are specifically good at that position. And I talked to Christian off the field the other day, and I asked him, about playing that. That's when I found out he played that position last year at Rutgers. And he said, yeah, that was the plan when I came here. Todd Bowles, I talked to him on the phone before I signed here, and he said that's what they wanted me to do. So you see a lot of guys kind of getting higher profiles around the league because they're excelling at that very important position, like Teron Johnson in Buffalo. Maybe he's not the biggest name on their roster, but he's one of their most important defensive players.
That's going to be so interesting. All right, and then I know that the defense last year, one of the big storylines was them not getting as many takeaways as they wanted, needed, knew they were capable of, and it's been just a huge talking point for them amongst themselves and saying that this is what we want and need to do. I think I've heard them say that they want, is it 30 interceptions or takeaways?
Takeaways.
Okay, that's what I thought. So 30 takeaways is their big goal. So do we see Friday night being a time that we start to see evidence of if this is a viable goal that they can get and where we've seen improvement?
It's definitely a viable goal. I looked at their season totals, and since Todd Bowles got here, that's been 4 seasons because he was the defensive coordinator before he was the head coach. And each of the first 3 years, the Buccaneers were up there in turnovers. It was between like 27 and 30. And then last year, just inexplicably, it dropped to 20. And that was only 10 interceptions. There was a gap of something like 6 games where the Bucs didn't have a single takeaway, which was bizarre. But it just happened.
It just even seems luck would have meant that you lucked
You're
into
going to get
few more than
a
those.
tip
I know,
ball at some
something,
point.
yeah.
But yesterday at practice, there was a lot of interceptions. And, of course, when it's your team against your team, you always have to go, is that good, is that bad? Todd Bowles did point out that sometimes you have to understand the context. So a couple of the interceptions came on plays where it was scripted to be the last play. So you have to do something. You're not punting. You're not just turning the ball over in downs. You have to try to make a throw downfield, and so you're throwing it into harm's way. But still, they were getting their hands on the ball. And the important thing, because this is what Todd has been harping on since last year and all offseason, when the ball comes to them, you have to catch it. And so yesterday they were catching it. So will we see that in the game? Preseason games, they can get a little bit sloppy, especially in the second half. So I'm not sure if we get 3 or 4 turnovers, if we're going to feel like, we're there. But it's better than getting none. So I do hope we see some.
Yeah, it's going to be so nice to have Friday to root for turnovers when you have a quarterback battle. It's hard to want to see turnovers happen.
Takeaways.
Right.
We're going to root for takeaways.
Yes, we're going to root for takeaways in terms of the defense getting those, because in practice, to your point, they get an interception and you're excited for the defense, but then you're wondering what it meant on the offensive side.
Well, I always see the pick and go, oh, good job, Jamel, and then I look and say, who threw that?
Yeah, so. I think that's going to be interesting. All right, so now we always, enjoy talking about the starters, of course, but training camp we spend a lot of time talking about potential backups, people that are going to make the roster. And I want to hear who you think on this team is a really high-quality backup that maybe has a potential future as a starter down the road on this team.
Well, and it's a pair of guys, and I think, and even Todd Bowles brought it up the other day when asked some of the guys he's really excited to see in these preseason games, and it's your primary backups at off-ball linebacker, because obviously the Buccaneers have Levante David and Devin White, and if they're healthy, they'll be on the field for every defensive snap. They have been for the last 4 years, except for about 5 games each. But that's not going to last forever. I mean, we've enjoyed having Levante here for more than a decade now. He's going into his 12th season, I believe, and we've loved having Devin White now going into his 5th year. But the reality is both those guys are actually on the last year of their current contracts. So there's no guarantee that we have either or both of them around for a long term. I hope that we do, but you have to plan just in case. And so KJ Britt and Servase Dennis, who's a rookie this year, and they were both former 5th-round picks, they've looked good out here, and it's going to be interesting to see them in action because I think they'll see a lot of action. I don't know how long the starters are really going to play in the first preseason game. So this is a game for guys like that are guys that you have to have in case something happens to one of your guys, and you need to know how good they are. And this is going to be their chance to play a lot, and I think those are 2 guys to really keep an eye on.
And I'm excited to see Ryan Neal play. This is a guy that I honestly couldn't believe was available to us to pick up. And I feel like he's been such a vocal guy at practice. And I love that. He brings a lot of energy. He almost gives me kind of like Richard Sherman vibes of just like super fun, loves, hyping guys up, a little bit of trash talking, but never in a way that instigates anything. He's just very fired up for his guys, and I think that's such an important thing to have, especially after we lost Rakeem Nunez-Roches. I feel like they are not the same at all in how they go about it, but I feel like he kind of helped fill that excitement, vocal void at practice a bit. Yeah,
he's very demonstrative. Like if he doesn't make the play exactly like he wanted to, he usually gets pretty mad at himself, rather, obviously. But yeah, that's another really good one because we haven't really seen him in action yet. I feel like you may have said it, but I feel like the Buccaneers got a little bit lucky that he was suddenly available because we needed another safety, quite honestly. And he got some All-Pro votes last year. He had a really good season for Seattle, so it'll be interesting to see him for the first time working in a game in a Buccaneers uniform. And we've been told that him and Antoine Winfield have forged really good chemistry early, which is important for safeties because obviously lots of times one of them has to go down or the other one has to go down, and they need to be able to communicate well. So we'll see how that goes.
And we know we've talked about Kalijah Cansey being injured and that he will not be ready for this preseason game. I know he would have gotten, a decent amount of looks probably trying to get him ready. And so with him being unavailable, who do you think could maybe benefit from that in terms of some extra snaps in this preseason game?
Well, we looked at, we got our first depth chart this week because of the game, and Logan Hall was listed as one of the starters alongside. We knew Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey would be listed there. And I think Logan is a guy that the Buccaneers coaches are really hoping to see a lot more from this year. He had a typical rookie season, some ups and downs, and in the end probably only got about maybe 35 to 40% of the offensive snaps, but they're going to want more out of him this year. He's a guy that put on some size and some strength in the offseason, and he's a guy that they really believe can give you some interior pressure. And if that's the case, when you already got Vita, we know he was 6.5 sacks last year. They expect Kalijah Cansey to be a great penetrator. If you got 3 guys in the middle doing that, that's really going to be very disruptive. So that's a guy that the coaches are really counting on to take a big step forward.
And so that wraps up kind of our defensive storylines we're excited to look at. But special teams, that's another area that I think it's amazing this preseason. We have several kind of jobs up for grabs when it comes to this. You got the kicker battle. You don't really know for sure who your return guy is on kicks and punts. And so let's start with the kicker one. What do you think we're going to be able to tell? We talked about, for quarterback, who do they start? Who do they play behind? Everything. With kickers, how do you see them trying to determine who's going to win this job and who gets the number of kicks?
I would suspect that they get a pretty equal number of opportunities. The hard part there is, unlike in practice where you can script it, it's a little harder to script field goal and extra point attempts in a game. The offense has to get you in position, right? So it'd be interesting for me to see if that affects any of their play calling strategy, their in-game decisions. The coaches, what if it's 4th and 2 at the 35, and maybe in a game you're more likely to go for that, but here you're like, well, we could try a 53-yard field goal. So it'll also be interesting to me to see which one goes first. We signed Chase McLaughlin pretty quickly in March after letting Ryan Suckup go, and it seemed at that point that he would be the unquestioned guy. And then in May, they picked up Rodrigo Blankenship, and now all of a sudden you have a competition.
Yeah, and it's funny because I do wonder, I agree with you. I always think it's interesting in preseason, if you have a kicker battle, do you try for, and especially with knowing how much having a big leg was important to who they brought in this year, do you purposefully try some long field goals in the game because of that? To your point, do you kick when maybe you would go for it? But then on the other end, you have a quarterback battle going on, so and you want to see them go for these things.
So which competition are you focusing on?
Yeah, and I'm sure that everybody would probably say the quarterback one is a little bit more important to sort out, so maybe does that affect that you don't do, but I just think that is, to your point, going to be interesting to see how that might affect their decisions.
But you only get so many opportunities for the kickers to look at the kickers. And the quarterbacks, you can get another 30 throws.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be, and then finally the return game. What are you looking at in terms of punt return, kick return? Who would be, who would your money be on of guys that we're going to see get the most shots at it?
Well, while Gene was up here entertaining with you, I actually did a little scouting over there on that field because they were doing punt return, and there were 5 guys in the rotation catching punts. And they were Devin Tompkins, who you assume is the leader in the clubhouse. He's the incumbent. And Coach Armstrong has said he thinks he's going to be an even better return man this year. But Trey Palmer was also in there. It was all receivers. Trey Palmer, David Moore, Kalen Geiger, and Tay Barber, who's an undrafted rookie. Those guys were all getting looks. So I think the most interesting part will be, I assume Devin Tompkins will get the first look at both punt and kickoff return, but who's the next guy? Is it Trey Palmer? Is there really a competition, and how open is it? And I think we'll see that in the upcoming games.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this training camp report presented by Ticketmaster. The game is Friday. We will be back with another show on Sunday because, of course, the team has the day after the game off, so we'll see you then.